Let's now move to Durban. One person is dead after a drive-by shooting on the N3 near the Sherwood off-ramp. Part of the highway had to be closed as police combed the scene for bullet casings and other evidence. Earlier in the day, there'd been another incident. An alleged stock thief was killed. He was intercepted by a security company on the N2 near Winklespruit in KwaZulu-Natal. Senior reporter Dasen Thathiah has been following both those stories and joins us now. So Dasen, tell us about this drive-by shooting near the Sherwood off-ramp in Durban. Do we know who the victim is, and does it look like a clear assassination?
Well, Sal, at this point, police are saying to us officially that they haven't identified the deceased, and this is understandable because this just happened a short while ago. In fact, after lunchtime today, that's when it took place. So they're saying that they still need time to conduct the investigations. However, some of my sources have told me that the initial reports suggest that the person who was killed was a school principal or a school teacher from the Durban area. And they had been talking to some of the colleagues of the gentleman. He's believed to be in his late 30s or early 40s. But at this point, it does seem like it could be an assassination. And I say does seem because, as I mentioned, police are still investigating this matter. The K2 Manor Trio Crimes team was also there. They normally look at these types of serious cases. But the reports are telling us that a vehicle had pulled up alongside this Mercedes-Benz as he traveled just off the N3, and that is the first entry point into the city, and the Sherwood off-ramp is to your left. And as he was traveling along there, this vehicle had driven up next to him, opened fire on the vehicle, and then proceeded further and possibly continued to shoot. If you look at the way the vehicle had come to rest, you'll see that there were bullet casings at the front of the vehicle. There were lots of bullet holes on the windows, and it seemed like the intent was clear, that whoever opened fire wanted to make sure that this person had passed away. In fact, we had an opportunity to speak to some of the paramedics that attended this incident. Let's listen to part of an interview that I conducted with Kyle van Reenen.
So obviously, when we first arrived, the scene was attended by the South African Police Services. At that stage, we had ascertained that the vehicle, as you could see, had been sprayed with high-caliber bullet holes. At the initial point, we weren't able to gain access to the body due to the legalities of the crime scene. However, we could ascertain that the man had been fatally wounded from visual inspection through the vehicle. At a later stage, we were allowed, once the senior officers had arrived on scene, to force entry to the vehicle and legally confirm that the man had been, he was deceased. He has been shot multiple times with a high-caliber firearm, and he is deceased.
So that was the incident on the N3. The highway was closed for a short period but is now reopened. But then earlier in the day, an alleged stock thief killed also on a highway, but this time the N2. Tell us about that.
That was early this morning, and that gang was being tracked by a team from Magma Security and Investigation. So that's a private security firm that had been assisting farmers down the south coast. So they've been complaining about stock theft, and these are small-scale farmers that we're talking about, just with a few cattle, a few animals on their properties. And over the past year or so, many of them were being affected by this crime. In fact, in December last year, this is when the spike kind of started. One of the farmers was telling us that about 10 of his cattle were stolen, and then as the months progressed, there'd been a number of others. So as a result of this, these investigations were being conducted, and it led this team to that area this morning, and they then intercepted a vehicle which was believed to be driven by this gang of stock thieves, and at the back were some of these animals that were slaughtered. So when they did approach this vehicle, they say that the suspects allegedly opened fire on them, and as a result of that, there was a shootout that took place on the N2. And again, I think we must stress this point. These shootings were happening on public roads, putting everyone else in danger. And in this incident here, the security officers then retaliated, and they ended up shooting the driver. He tried to get away but was killed, eventually died a few meters across the road and down an embankment. And part of that road was also closed off as they dealt with that. Police then recovered a firearm as well from that scene. But this seems to be part of a bigger problem and ongoing investigation, Sal, into the issue of stock theft. I know the SAPS also has certain projects that they're busy with because it's becoming increasingly a problem that many farmers are dealing with in KZN.
All right, well, thank you so much for that update, Dasen. It really is, and we know that from now, really, people start flocking down to the beaches in KwaZulu-Natal, and unfortunately, it seems that there's quite a lot for the police to be dealing with. We know that there's visible policing, but just how safe is Durban feeling at the moment as it prepares for this holiday season?
It's interesting that you asked that question, Sal, because you'll know that there were these so-called festive season launches that were taking place. The police minister was here. The mayor, excuse me, in eThekwini was also making these announcements late last month. And just today, there was a briefing that we attended around just before midday where there were new Metro Police officers that were passing out. And the reassurance that was given to us as well as the public was that Durban is a safe place to be. But it seems like despite the extra deployments, there will always be these incidents of crime. And as I said to our colleague Dan earlier, that these incidents will always be bad, but it's particularly bad when you think about the time that is happening now, just ahead of the peak of the festive season in Durban.
Yeah, and you made the point on public roads as well, where innocent people can be caught in the crossfire. Really very worrying indeed.